I stood before room 712 at the Langford Hotel, nestled in the heart of Miami, my fingers tightly gripping the strap of my handbag. I knew I had no business being here, yet I still lifted my hand and gave a gentle knock on the solid wooden door, my pulse echoing in the sound. A long silence stretched out from inside before the latch finally clicked. Slowly, the door creaked open, revealing a tall man with slightly tousled hair, his white shirt unbuttoned at the top, exposing his tanned skin. "Nathan Carter, my husband's manager. You came," he murmured, his voice deep and slightly rough. I swallowed hard, feeling the cool blast of air conditioning from the room, a stark contrast to the heat simmering within me. I could turn back now, pretend I had never set foot here, but instead, I stepped forward. I had always believed my marriage was stable. Not perfect, but not failing either. My husband, David Miller, was a talented civil engineer, employed by a prestigious company in New York. He was a dedicated man, hardworking and loving in his own way. Yet, he failed to see one crucial thing. Loneliness could consume a woman slowly, mercilessly. On the nights he worked late, I lay alone in our king-sized bed, feeling hollow, like a ghost drifting through the empty spaces of our marriage. I had tried to fill the void, with hobbies, with friends, but there are certain emptinesses that no distraction can erase. They remain, waiting for someone to step in and unexpectedly change everything. A business trip to Miami was an invitation I found impossible to decline. "I think you'll like Miami," David had said, his attention fixed on his laptop as he booked our flights. "While I'm in meetings, you can go to the beach, visit a spa, or shop, treat it like a vacation." The offer was too enticing to resist. I agreed instantly, unaware that this trip would alter my life forever, that I would meet a man who would set fire to everything I had once tried to preserve. I'm not sure if there is a single defining moment when a relationship begins to unravel. Maybe it starts with an innocent glance, a casual joke, or an unexpected silence stretching too long. For me, it was my first night in Miami when I ran into Nathan Carter. Nathan was David's senior manager. I had seen him at company events, but had never truly noticed him. He carried himself with confidence, always impeccably dressed, always in control. My husband respected him, even admired him, but I had never imagined he would become someone I could never forget. That evening, David was stuck in an urgent meeting with his engineering team. Alone in the upscale hotel, I decided to pass the time at the bar. I had no intention of doing anything wrong. Just a quiet glass of wine, a moment to breathe after a long day. Then I saw Nathan. He sat at the bar, a glass of whiskey catching the dim glow of the lights. When our eyes met, he lifted an eyebrow before motioning to the bartender. "Chardonnay?" he asked as I took a seat. I laughed, surprised he remembered my favorite wine. "You know my taste, huh?" Nathan shrugged, a faint smile playing at the edges of his lips. I have a habit of noticing the little things. Something in his voice sent a chill down my spine. Not fear, but something more complicated. A mixture of caution and curiosity. We started talking, first about small things. Work, the weather, the dazzling lights of Miami. Then the conversation shifted, became more personal. "Why did you come on this trip with David?" Nathan asked, his voice calm and measured. "He invited me," I said, taking a sip of wine. "Said I could treat it as a mini vacation." "And? Are you enjoying it?" I hesitated, staring at the ice melting in my glass. I could lie, say yes, pretend everything was fine. Instead, I was more honest than I should have been. "I don't know." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "Why not?" I exhaled slowly. "Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a role in a movie I never chose. I love my husband, but there are days I wonder if I'm truly happy." The words had barely left my lips before regret set in. I shouldn't have confided in Nathan. But instead of laughing or offering empty reassurances, he simply nodded as if he understood. "I think we all have moments like that," he said. "Times when we wonder if our lives are just a series of choices we never really made." I couldn't tell if it was just an offhand remark or something deeper, but suddenly I felt pulled toward him. We continued talking, continued drinking. As my second glass of wine emptied, I caught myself smiling more than usual. With Nathan, I didn't feel like an afterthought, a forgotten wife overshadowed by her husband's career. I felt seen, and that was the most dangerous part of all. When we left the bar, I assumed the night was over. But Nathan didn't head to his room right away. Instead, he lingered, watching me. "I'm going for a walk," he said. "Wanna come?" I should have refused. I should have turned and left. But I didn't. I fell into step beside him, walking under the neon lights of Miami, unaware that I was stepping into a storm I wouldn't be able to escape. I reassured myself. This was harmless. Just two people taking a stroll on an unfamiliar street. Nothing more, nothing less. But if that were true, why did my pulse race when he moved just a little closer? We wandered down Brickell Avenue, where the skyscrapers glittered overhead. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and warmth. I pulled my thin jacket tighter, trying to compose myself. "Miami is beautiful," I murmured, breaking the silence stretching between us. Nathan glanced at me, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Even more beautiful when you know how to enjoy it." I turned to him, half smiling. "So you think I'm not enjoying it properly?" He shrugged, his movement slow and deliberate. "I don't know. But if you want to, I know a great place to eat." I hesitated. I could return to the hotel right now, retreat to the safety of my marriage. But a quiet part of me, one I barely acknowledged, wanted to extend this moment just a little longer. Finally, I nodded. "Okay, but just for dinner," Nathan smirked knowingly. Just for dinner. The place he took me was a tucked-away Italian spot called Casa Tua, hidden from the busy Miami streets. The restaurant exuded warmth, with soft golden lighting and tables draped in pristine white tablecloths. Stepping inside, I felt as if I had left the chaotic world behind. The ambiance was calmer, more intimate. A waiter guided us to a cozy table by the window, where the glow from the wine glasses sent scattered reflections dancing across the surface. As I slipped off my jacket, feeling the comforting heat of the space, Nathan watched me for a moment before speaking. "Do you ever take time for yourself?" I chuckled. "Are we talking about spa days or solo vacations?" "No, I mean moments that belong only to you, not for anyone else." His words gave me pause. I had never looked at it that way. My entire life revolved around David. The meals I cooked, the plans I altered to match his schedule. I adored my husband, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten what it meant to simply be me. "I don't know," I admitted truthfully. Nathan didn't reply immediately. Instead, he swirled the wine in his glass, took a slow sip, and regarded me as if he could see straight through me. "Maybe it's time you find out." The waiter served our meals, but the aroma of pasta and the richness of the wine barely registered. I was hyper-aware of Nathan, the way he looked at me, the unspoken tension that thickened the air between us. After dinner, we strolled back to the hotel. I knew I should end the night there, but I found myself reluctant to part ways. When we reached the lobby, I hesitated, maintaining a cautious distance. "Thanks for dinner," I murmured, my voice softer than I intended. Nathan held my gaze, his eyes unreadable. "Anytime." I lingered for a second before turning away, but before I could take another step, his voice stopped me. "If you ever want to do something just for yourself, you know where to find me." His words were quiet, yet they carried weight. I didn't look back, didn't answer. I simply stepped into the elevator, my pulse hammering in my ears. As the doors slid shut, I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. I shouldn't be thinking about this. I shouldn't be this conflicted. But there was one undeniable truth. I remembered Nathan's gaze, and I wasn't sure I could forget it. I told myself I'd forget it by the time I reached my room. I was wrong. David hadn't returned yet. The suite was eerily silent, amplifying the sound of my own heartbeat. I perched on the edge of the bed, kicked off my heels, but my fingers trembled. I couldn't escape the memory of Nathan. His deep voice, the quiet intensity in his eyes. "If you ever want to do something just for yourself, you know where to find me." I lay back, staring at the ceiling. I could switch off the lights, slip beneath the covers, and wait for David to come back, pretending tonight had been nothing more than an innocent dinner. But I knew better. I knew I wouldn't shake this feeling. The anticipation simmering beneath my skin was impossible to ignore. And then, like someone moving in a dream, I stood up. I didn't remember leaving the room. Only the sensation of the plush carpet beneath my feet, the relentless pounding in my chest. I found myself standing before room 9114. My grip tightened on my purse strap. I could still walk away. I could still undo this. But instead, I lifted my hand and knocked. Just once. Nothing. Silence. I was about to turn back when the soft click of the lock echoed in the quiet hallway. The door eased open, and there he was. Nathan. He didn't look shocked. He didn't speak. He simply stared at me as if he had been expecting me all along. I said nothing either. I just stepped inside. Nathan shut the door behind me, locking it. The space between us was small but charged. The dim glow of the hotel lamp cast shadows across the room, highlighting every detail. His shirt was slightly creased, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up, revealing the defined muscles of his forearms. He wasn't in a rush, but his gaze burned with unspoken anticipation. I swallowed, searching for an excuse to explain my presence. But no justification would be enough. Nathan moved closer. "Are you sure?" His voice was rough, husky. I wanted to tell him I wasn't, that I had only come to say we should stop before it was too late. But then his fingers brushed my arm, heat radiating from his skin. And in that moment, I knew I had already lost control. I didn't answer. I let the moment consume me. That was the night I crossed a line I could never erase. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, warming my skin. The unfamiliar weight beside me made my breath hitch. I wasn't used to waking in a strange bed. In the arms of a man who wasn't my husband. Nathan slept soundly, his breathing steady. I watched him, emotions warring within me. Panic, guilt, and something far more dangerous. Satisfaction. I slid out of bed, moving swiftly to get dressed. I had to return before David noticed my absence. But as I reached for the door, Nathan's voice broke the silence. "You're just gonna leave without saying anything?" I froze but didn't turn to face him. "We shouldn't have done this," I murmured. A low chuckle rumbled from his chest. "Pretty sure we passed that point hours ago." I bit my lip. He wasn't wrong. I had shattered every boundary I swore I'd never cross. The worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. Without another word, I slipped out, the door clicking shut behind me. I felt like a thief in the night, but as I crawled into bed beside David, my heart still racing, I realized something even more startling. I didn't regret it. I told myself it had been a fleeting mistake. A reckless moment I could shove into the recesses of my mind and move on. But I had underestimated myself. And I had underestimated Nathan Carter. That morning, I woke earlier than usual, careful not to stir David. His back was turned, his breathing deep and even. I studied him for a moment, searching for something. Guilt, remorse, even shame. But I felt nothing at all. Yet all I could feel was a persistent yearning. Stepping into the bathroom, I let the cold water run. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't wash away the sensation of Nathan's hands tracing my skin or the memory of his lips, his warm breath murmuring against my ear. Pressing my forehead to the mirror, I shut my eyes. What had I done? But instead of dwelling on regret, my thoughts drifted to when it would happen again. I forced myself to remain composed throughout the morning. David hurried off, still under the impression that I was simply a devoted wife tagging along on his business trip. Down at the hotel bar, I ordered a cup of coffee, striving to appear normal. But when I turned, I spotted Nathan standing near the entrance of the lobby. Our eyes met, locking for a fleeting second, and in that moment, I knew it wasn't over. A knowing smile curved his lips, one that suggested he understood exactly what was running through my mind. "Did you sleep well?" His voice was low. I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. "It was wonderful, thanks for asking." Nathan tilted his head slightly, his gaze sharp. "Is that so?" My grip tightened around my coffee cup. He was playing with me, and I knew I should shut this conversation down. Yet, instead, I found myself saying something unexpected. "Do you have any plans today?" His eyebrows lifted slightly before he chuckled. "I do, but that depends on you." My heart clenched. I should have left it at that. Instead, I placed my coffee cup down, looking up at him. "Where?" Nathan pulled out his phone, typing a few quick messages. A moment later, a new address popped up on my screen. Another hotel, not the one we were staying at. I swallowed hard. He wasn't hiding his intentions, and I couldn't pretend I didn't understand. The game had begun, and deep down I knew once I stepped into it, there would be no turning back. Standing in front of the mirror in the unfamiliar hotel room, I smoothed out the snug beige dress I had chosen. A knock sounded at the door, sending my heart into a frantic rhythm. I moved toward it, hesitating only for a moment before pulling it open. Nathan stood there, his expression unwavering. Whatever doubt I had dissolved instantly. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could utter a word, he was inside, shutting the door behind him. The air between us shifted, thick with tension and anticipation. He stepped closer, his towering presence overwhelming. "You know this won't end here, right?" I didn't answer, but I didn't have to. The next second, Nathan's lips were on mine, and I didn't resist. I returned to the hotel before David, carefully erasing any trace of what had transpired. Fixing my hair, smoothing my dress, and applying a fresh coat of lipstick to conceal the redness Nathan's kisses had left behind. When David walked in, he noticed nothing. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and resumed my role as the devoted wife. But deep inside, I knew the truth. I was no longer just David's wife. I had become Nathan Carter's lover. And the worst part? I didn't want to stop. From that moment on, everything between Nathan and me shifted. We were no longer victims of an impulsive mistake. We had become willing participants, deliberately playing a dangerous game that existed only between us. Every stolen moment, every whispered word, every hidden touch. It was exhilarating. The trip continued, filled with meetings and formal events. I played my part flawlessly, seated beside David, smiling politely when asked about our marriage, feigning innocence while concealing a scandalous truth. Yet Nathan was always watching. And so was I. No words were needed. A glance across a crowded room, a fleeting touch in the hotel hallway, a single text that lit up my screen while David conversed with a colleague. 20 minutes, rooftop. I never questioned. I simply went. That night, as I stepped onto the rooftop, Nathan was already there, a glass of whiskey catching the city's glow. My pulse quickened as I approached. "Thought you weren't coming," he murmured, his voice rough. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I moved to the railing, gazing down at the dazzling lights of Miami. A gentle breeze lifted my hair, and then I felt his hand on my back. Light, but possessive. We stood there, the silence pulling us closer with every passing second. Finally, I whispered, "We should stop." Nathan let out a quiet chuckle. "Really?" I turned to face him. "This won't end well." Lifting his glass, he took a slow sip. "Then don't think about the ending. Just think about right now." I didn't reply. I just felt the warmth radiating from him, the intensity in his stare. And then I stopped thinking altogether. When he pulled me in, I didn't resist. The business trip ended. Back in New York, I resumed the life I had once believed was enough, but I wasn't the same woman anymore. Everything appeared unchanged. The nights David worked late, the quiet mornings, the dull conversations. But inside me, something burned. Nathan had ignited a fire, and only he had the power to keep it alive. We didn't part ways when we left Miami. We merely adjusted how we met. A simple text in the middle of the day, "Old hotel, 3 p.m., an accidental run-in at the office. A hushed phone call in the dead of night as I pretended to take a walk just to hear his voice. The game continued, growing more reckless. And then, the thing I had dreaded most happened. David began to suspect. At first, it was subtle. Curious glances, seemingly casual questions. "Where have you been lately? Why do you seem different? Is there something you're not telling me?" I was skilled at lying. I blamed it on yoga, outings with friends, personal projects. David didn't press further, but the doubt in his eyes told me he wasn't convinced. That should have terrified me. What scared me more was that I didn't want to stop. I knew this secret wouldn't last. And I was right. One evening, as I prepared to leave the house, my phone buzzed. "Nathan. Hotel, 8 p.m. Don't be late." I stared at the screen, heart hammering. Before I could reply, David entered the room, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on me. "Where are you going?" I stiffened, scrambling for an answer. "Just out with friends." David didn't reply right away. Instead, he just stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, without a word, he reached for his phone, turned it on, and in that instant, I felt my entire world shatter. Displayed on the screen was a photo. Nathan and me inside a hotel room just 2 days prior. There was nothing left to deny. My breath caught in my throat, and the walls seemed to close in around me. David tightened his grip on the phone, his voice rough. How long? I remained silent. I couldn't speak. A faint, almost bitter smile crossed his face, though his eyes were filled with pain. I had my suspicions for a while, he admitted, but I never thought you'd actually go through with it. I wanted to respond, to offer some kind of explanation, but no excuse would change the reality. I had betrayed him, and now I had to face the consequences. That night, I walked out of our home. I had no idea where I was headed, only that I couldn't stay there. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Nathan, but I ignored it. As I wandered through the streets of New York, one thing was clear. My life would never be the same. I had lost David, but deep inside, I understood something else. Something undeniable. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive.